The silence in the house was not peaceful, it was heavy, pressing down on Genevieve's chest like a physical weight. She lay perfectly still on her side of the massive bed, her hand resting instinctively on the curve of her stomach. Under her palm, the baby shifted, a small, fluttering movement that served as the only reminder that she was not entirely alone in the darkness. She did not need to reach across the mattress to know that the other side was empty. The seats there were cold, untouched for hours. She had stopped checking the clock on the nightstand. She knew, simply by the rhythm of her own breathing and the ache in her lower back, that it was deep into the night, perhaps 3 or 4 in the morning. This had become the new routine, a pattern etched into the last 6 months of her life. Dominique would leave in the morning with a kiss that landed on her cheek like a dry leaf, and he would return long after she had forced herself to try to sleep. The sound of a heavy door closing downstairs shattered the quiet. Genevieve stiffened. Her heart began to hammer against her ribs, a mixture of relief that he was alive and a sickening dread of the conversation that would follow. She heard the muffled thud of his footsteps on the stairs. They were slow, deliberate, lacking the urgency of a man rushing home to his pregnant wife. The bedroom door cracked open. A sliver of light from the hallway cut across the floor before vanishing as the door clicked shut. She heard the rustle of fabric, the sound of a jacket being tossed onto a chair, and then the heavy sigh of a man who felt burdened by his own existence. Genevieve turned on the bedside lamp. The sudden light made Dominique wince. He stood by the foot of the bed, loosening his silk tie with jerky, irritated movements. His face was handsome, sharply defined and aristocratic, but his eyes were bloodshot and cold. "You are awake," he stated flatly. It was not a question, nor was it an apology. He was worried, Genevieve said, her voice raspy from disuse. "It is nearly morning, Dominique. You did not answer my calls." Dominique let out a short, dismissive laugh as un buttoned his shirt. "I am building an empire, Genevieve. I do not have time to report my every movement to you just because you are sitting at home doing nothing." The unfairness of the accusation stung, but she swallowed the retort. "I am not doing nothing, I am carrying our child. And the doctor said I need rest, not stress. Wondering where you are every night is stressful." I walked toward the bathroom, not even sparing her a glance. As I passed the bed, the air shifted. It wasn't just the scent of stale scotch and cigars that clung to him. Beneath the sharp odor of alcohol, there was something else. Something floral, sweet, and suffocating, wild orchids and musk. It was a perfume that Genevieve had never worn in her life. "You smell like her," she whispered, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Dominique stopped in the doorway of the bathroom. He turned slowly, his expression hardening into a mask of cruel indifference. "Excuse me? You smell like perfume," Genevieve said, sitting up, pulling the duvet higher to cover her stomach as if shielding the baby from his gaze. "Do not lie to me, Dominique. Not tonight." He walked back toward her, his movements predatory. He placed a hand on the bedpost and leaned in, his shadow falling over her face. "You are hysterical, Genevieve. This is exactly what my mother was talking about. The pregnancy has made you paranoid. You smell expensive cologne and the soap from the club, nothing more." "I know what I smell," she insisted, though her voice trembled. Dominique sneered. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, but the gesture was devoid of affection. His fingers felt cold against her skin. "Look at yourself. You are exhausted. You are swollen. Your mind is playing tricks on you because you are insecure. Do you really think I have the energy for an affair when I spend 18 hours a day cleaning up the messes your father left in this company?" He pulled away abruptly, disgusted. "Go back to sleep. And do not embarrass me by asking me about this again." He disappeared into the bathroom, the sound of the shower running drowned out Genevieve's uneven breathing. She sat there, trembling, feeling the gaslighting wrap around her like a chokehold. "Emma made her feel small, crazy, and undesirable. Your support gives a voice to those silenced by power and betrayal. Please hit like and subscribe so we can keep exposing the truths that others try to hide. And do not go anywhere, trust me, the twist waiting behind those ballroom doors will leave you speechless." She looked at the chair where he had tossed his suit jacket. A sudden, sharp instinct took over. Pushing aside the heavy duvet, she swung her legs over the edge of the bed, and stood up. Her balance was slightly off due to the pregnancy, but she moved quickly to the chair. Her hands shook as she picked up the jacket. The scent of the other woman was stronger air, woven into the fabric. She checked the pockets, nothing in the left. Nothing in the breast pocket. She reached into the right pocket and her fingers brushed against something cold and hard. She pulled it out. It was an earring. A long, cascading drop of diamonds ending in a ruby that caught the dim light of the lamp. It was flashy, ostentatious, and undeniably expensive. It was not the kind of jewelry a man accidentally picked up. It was the kind of jewelry a woman took off, in the heat of passion and slipped into a pocket as a memento or a message. Genevieve stared at the object in her palm. The shower stopped running. Panic flared in her chest. She quickly shoved the earring back into the pocket and threw the jacket back onto the chair, scrambling back into bed just as the bathroom door opened. Dominic walked out with a towel around his waist, water dripping from his hair. He looked at her, his eyes narrowing slightly as if he could sense her elevated heart rate. Still awake, he muttered, turning off the lamp and plunging the room into darkness. "I am trying," Genevieve whispered into the blackness. He got into bed, turning his back to her immediately, pulling the blankets tight around his shoulders. He was inches away, yet he felt like a stranger. Genevieve lay there, eyes wide open in the dark, the image of the ruby burned into her mind. He was lying. He was cheating. And he thought, she was too weak to do anything about it. But as she felt the baby kick again, a spark of anger ignited beneath her fear, he thought she was weak. He was wrong. The hotel suite was located on the penthouse floor, far above the noise of the city streets. It was a space designed for secrets, where discretion was included in the exorbitant price tag. Dominic stood by the window, looking out at the skyline, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was not wearing his wedding ring. It sat on the mahogany table near the door, a heavy band of gold that he had slid off the moment he entered the room. Behind him, the soft rustle of silk announced her presence. "You look tense, darling," a voice purred. Vanessa stepped into his line of sight. She was everything Genevieve was currently not. Where Genevieve was soft and rounded with pregnancy, Vanessa was sharp-angled and lean muscle. She moved with a feline grace, wearing a silk robe that was loosely tied, revealing flashes of skin with every step. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves around her face, and her lips were painted a deep, blood red. She walked up to Dominic and took the glass from his hand, taking a sip while maintaining intense eye contact. "Is the little wife giving you trouble again?" Dominic sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She's suspicious. She found a way to annoy me the second he walked through the door last night. She claimed he smelled like you." Vanessa laughed, a low, throaty sound that vibrated in the care room. "Smart girl. I suppose I should be more careful." She stepped closer, pressing her body against his arm. "Or maybe I want her to know. Maybe I am tired of sharing you." Dominic looked down at her. His expression softened, the cruelty he showed his wife replaced by a hungry, desperate sort of desire. "You know the plan, Vanessa. We just have to wait until the heir is born. My mother insists on it. If we leave her now, while she is pregnant, the board of directors will have a moral crisis, the public image will be ruined. We need to play the part of the happy family for just a few more months." "A few more months," Vanessa repeated, tracing a finger down the lapel of his shirt. "That is a long time to wait, Dominic. I am not a woman who likes to wait in the shadows." "You are not in the shadows," Dominic promised, grabbing her hand. "You are everywhere I want to be. Genevieve is. She is a ghost in that house. She barely speaks. She has let herself go completely. It is depressing just to look at her." "Is she coming to the Christmas gala?" Vanessa asked, her tone shifting from playful to sharp. Dominic groaned. "She has to. It is the biggest event of the year. If she does not show up, people will talk. But do not worry, she will likely stand in the corner holding her stomach and drinking water. She is invisible even when she is in the room." Vanessa pulled away from him and walked to the table where his wedding ring lay. She picked it up, tossing it in the air and catching it. "I want to go to the gala." Dominic froze. "Vanessa, no. That is too risky. Everyone will be there. My investors, the press, her father." "Her father is a retired old man," Vanessa scoffed. "And I do not care about the risk. I am your head of marketing, remember? I have every professional reason to be there. Unless you are ashamed of me?" She turned to him, dropping the robe slightly off one shoulder. It was a calculated move, a weaponization of her beauty that she knew he could not resist. Dominic crossed the room in 3 long strides. He took the ring from her hand and set it back on the table with a loud clatter, then grabbed her by the waist. I am not ashamed. I am obsessed with you. You know that. You are the only thing that makes my life bearable. Then let me come, she whispered against his lips. Let me see her. I want to see the competition. I want to see this woman you are so desperate to leave. I promise I will behave. Dominique hesitated, and knew it was dangerous. And knew inviting his mistress to the same party as his pregnant wife was walking a fine line between bravery and stupidity, but as he looked at Vanessa, at the fire in her eyes, and the curve of her smile, his arrogance took over. He was Dominique Blackwood. He controlled everything. He could handle 2 women in one room. Fine, he sighed, his voice rough. You can come. But you stay away from her. I do not need a scene. Vanessa smiled, a slow, victorious expression that did not reach her eyes. She leaned in and kissed him, biting his lower lip hard enough to sting. I would not dream of causing a scene, Dominique. I just want to celebrate your success. She pulled back, her mind already racing. She had no intention of staying away from Genevieve. She wanted to break her. She wanted to stand in front of the wife and show her, exactly, who owned Dominique's heart and his future. It will be a night to remember, Vanessa sighed softly, turning to walk toward the bathroom to dress. I will wear red. You always liked me in red. Dominique watched her go, feeling a rush of adrenaline. He picked up the wedding ring and stared at it. Felt like a shackle. He slid it back onto his finger, the metal cold and heavy. He told himself, he was doing what was necessary. He was securing his legacy with the child, and securing his happiness with Vanessa. He convinced himself that Genevieve would be fine, that she would be well compensated in the divorce, that she was too weak to fight back anyway. He had no idea that the woman he called a ghost was currently awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling, planning her own survival. A night to remember, Dominique shot to the empty room. He poured himself another drink, unaware that he had just authorized the beginning of his own destruction. The summons came shortly after breakfast. A maid, who refused to make eye contact, informed Genevieve that Victoria Blackwood was waiting in the private Solar Logic Conservatory and expected her attendance immediately. In this house, requests from Victoria were not invitations, they were commands. Genevieve smoothed the fabric of her cream-colored maternity blouse, checked the reflection in the hallway mirror to ensure not a single hair was out of place, and walked toward the east wing of the estate. Her heart beat a nervous rhythm against her ribs. Victoria had never liked her, but in the last few months, her indifference had curdled into active hostility. When Genevieve entered the conservatory, Victoria was seated on a velvet high-back chair, looking more like a queen on a throne than a mother-in-law having tea. She was dressed in an impeccable suit of charcoal gray, her silver hair coiffed into a rigid style that defied gravity. She did not smile when Genevieve entered. She merely gestured to the empty chair opposite her with a manicured hand. Sit, Victoria commanded. You look out of breath, Genevieve. Surely the walk from your bedroom is not that strenuous. Genevieve sat, placing her hands on her lap to hide their trembling. I am fine, Victoria, just a little tired. The baby has been active. Victoria's eyes dropped to Genevieve's stomach, her gaze clinical and cold. The air is strong. That is the only thing that matters, but you. You look haggard. She picked up her porcelain tea cup, taking a small sip before continuing. I have noticed you have been pestering Dominique lately. Asking questions, calling his office repeatedly. It is unbecoming. Genevieve felt a flash of heat rise in her cheeks. I am his wife, Victoria. He does not come home until the early hours of the morning, smells of another woman's perfume. He found an earring in his pocket that does not belong to me. Am I supposed to say nothing? Victoria set the cup down with a sharp clink, the sound echoed in the glass room. She leaned forward, her expression hardening. You are supposed to be a Blackwood wife. Do you know what that entails? It means you maintain the dignity of this family. It means you create a peaceful sanctuary for your husband, who carries the weight of a massive corporation on his shoulders. It does not mean you sniff his hackets like a jealous schoolgirl. He is having an affair, Genevieve stated, her voice shaking but firm. I know he is. Victoria let out a sigh of exaggerated patience. Genevieve, listen to me closely. Men like Dominique have appetites. They have stress that requires release. Whatever he does outside of this house is irrelevant as long as he returns to it. Your job is to carry that child and look presentable. If he is seeking comfort elsewhere, perhaps you should ask yourself why he cannot find it with you. The cruelty of the words took Genevieve's breath away. You are blaming me? I am 6 months pregnant with his child. And you have become boring, Victoria said simply, as if stating the weather. You mope. You complain. You have lost your spark. Dominic needs a woman who challenges him, who excites him. Right now, you are merely an incubator. Genevieve gripped the arms of her chair to keep from standing up and running out. That is cruel. That is reality, Victoria countered. Now, tomorrow is the Christmas gala. It is the most important night of the social calendar. Investors will be there. The press will be there. I expect you to look flawless. No dark circles under your eyes. No sullen expressions. You will stand by Dominic's side, you will smile, and you will convince the world that you are the happiest couple in the city. And if he cannot? Genevieve asked quietly. If he cannot pretend while parades his infidelity in my face? Victoria's eyes narrowed into slits. Then you will find your position in this family very precarious. You are useful to us because of the child you carry, once that baby is born. Well, let us who say that custody battles are expensive and exhausting, and the Blackwood family has never lost one. Do you understand me? The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It wasn't just about the marriage anymore, it was about her child. Victoria was telling her that she was replaceable. Genevieve swallowed the lump in her throat. She realized then that there was no ally in this house. She was entirely alone. I understand, Genevieve whispered. Good. Victoria picked up her tea again, dismissing her. Fix your face, Genevieve, you look tragic. And do something about your hair. It looks limp. Genevieve stood up and walked out of the conservatory without another word. She kept her back straight until she turned the corner, and only then did she allow her hand to fly to her mouth to stifle a sob. They thought she was weak. They thought they could threaten her into silence. But as she walked back to her empty room, the fear began to transform into something colder, harder. Victoria had made a mistake. She had threatened a mother, and Genevieve would burn the entire estate to the ground before she let them take her baby. The day of the Christmas gala arrived with a shouting energy that vibrated through the floorboards of the state. Since dawn, teams of caterers, florists, and event planners had been swarming the halls. The scent of pine, cinnamon, and roasting maids drifted up from the kitchens, warring with the smell of industrial floor wax and fresh lilies. Genevieve stayed in her room for most of the day. She felt like an intruder in her own home. Downstairs, the transformation was taking place. The ballroom was being draped in gold and velvet, the massive spruce tree was being adorned with crystal ornaments, and the stage was being set for the orchestra. It was a display of wealth meant to dazzle the city, a perfect mask for the rot that lay beneath the surface. Around 4 in the afternoon, Genevieve ventured out to get a glass of water. The hallway was cluttered with boxes of imported wine. As she passed the library, she heard a voice. It was Dominic. It sounded agitated. Genevieve stopped, pressing herself against the wall beside the slightly ajar heavy oak door. I cannot do it tonight, mother, Dominic was saying, his voice tight with stress. It is too soon. The lawyer said we need to wait until the birth certificate is signed. Victoria's voice was muffled, coming through the speakerphone, but her tone was unmistakable. We cannot wait forever, Dominic. She is becoming a liability. Did you see her yesterday? She knows. If she decides to file for divorce before the baby is born, she could petition for full custody based on your extracurricular activities. We need to secure the child first. I know, Dominic snapped. But Vanessa is pushing me. She wants to be announced. She is tired of hiding. Vanessa needs to learn patience, Victoria replied sharply. Tell her to enjoy the party tonight but to keep her distance. We will begin the separation proceedings in the spring. Once the heir is safely in our custody, we will declare Genevieve unfit. Postpartum depression is a very convenient narrative, Dominic. It explains everything. The instability, the mood swings. The courts will give us the baby to protect him. The glass of water in her hand shook so violently that water sloshing onto her wrist. It wasn't just a divorce, it was a calculated plot. They were going to gaslight her, label her mentally unstable, and steal her baby the moment it was born. Fine, Dominic said, sounding weary. I will handle Vanessa. And I will make sure Genevieve plays her part tonight. Make sure she does, Victoria warned. One slip up, one scene, and the investors will get spooked. We need stability. Genevieve backed away slowly, her heart pounding so loud she was terrified they would hear it. She retreated to her bedroom and locked the door. She sank onto the floor, hugging her knees. They had everything planned. They were going to destroy her life systematically. She sat there for an hour, paralyzed by terror, until the door handle rattled. Genevieve, Dominique's voice came from the other side. Open the door. The stylists are here. She forced herself to stand. She wiped her face, took a deep breath, and unlocked the door. Dominique stood there, already dressed in his tuxedo trousers and a crisp white shirt, though his body was undone. He looked at her, his eyes scanning her face not with love, but with critical assessment. You have been crying, he accused, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. Hormones, Genevieve lied, her voice flat. I am just emotional about the holiday. Dominique stepped closer. The space between them felt charged with a dangerous energy. He reached out and tilted her chin up. Listen to me. Tonight is important. I do not want any tears. I do not want any sudden looks. You will wear the white dress my mother picked out. You will stand beside me, and you will look adoring. Do you understand? I understand, she said. Stared at her for a moment longer, looking for any sign of rebellion, finding none, and nodded. Good. Do not embarrass me, Genevieve, I mean it. He turned to leave, but paused at the small antique desk near the window where he had set down his leather-bound planner. He picked it up, checking a message on his phone. As he did, a piece of paper slipped out from the back of the planner and fluttered to the floor. Dominique didn't notice. He was too engrossed in crime screen as he walked out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Genevieve stared at the paper. She walked over and picked it up. It was the finalized, VIP guest list for the evening, printed on thick cardstock. Her eyes scanned the names. Senators, business moguls, celebrities, and there, handwritten in red ink at the very bottom, added at the last minute, was a name that made her stomach turn. Vanessa Art. And next to it, a note in Dominique's handwriting, seated at table 1. Table 1. The family table. Genevieve dropped the paper. It wasn't enough that he was cheating. It wasn't enough that they were plotting to steal her child. He was bringing his mistress into their home, sitting her at their table, and forcing his wife to break bread with the woman who was destroying her marriage. The sheer audacity of it burned through her fear. The sadness that had weighed her down for months evaporated, replaced by a cold, white-hot fury. They thought she was a victim. They thought she would crumble under the pressure and let them paint her as the crazy ex-wife. Genevieve looked at her reflection in the mirror. She looked pale, yes. But her eyes were dark and focused. No, she whispered to the empty room. She walked to the closet and pulled out the white dress Victoria had selected. It was modest, simple, almost plain, designed to make her fade into the background. Genevieve put it on. She sat at her vanity and allowed the stylists to do hair and makeup. She remained silent, saving her energy. When she stood up to leave the room, she touched her stomach one last time. They want a sow, she murmured to her unborn child. Let us give them one. She opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, walking toward the music and the laughter rising from the ballroom, walking straight into the lion's den with her head held high. The descent down the grand staircase felt less like an entrance and more like walking the plank. Genevieve moved slowly, her hand gripping the polished mahogany banister with white-knuckled intensity. Below her, the ballroom was a sea of black tuxedos and shimmering gowns, a shifting tide of the city's elite. The noise was a physical wall, a cacophony of crystal glasses clinking, orchestral strings swelling, and the low, buzzing hum of gossip. Dominique waited for her at the bottom of the stairs. He checked his watch, a flicker of irritation crossing his face before he smoothed it into a mask of welcoming affection as she reached the final step. He folded her his arm, but as Genevieve took it, she felt his muscles tense. It was not a support, it was a restraint. You are late, Dominique whispered through a fixed smile, waving at a senator across the room. I told you to be down here 10 minutes ago. He was struggling with the zipper, Genevieve murmured, keeping her gaze straight ahead. The dress is tight. Then stop eating, Dominique replied, his voice low and pleasant, as if he were whispering a compliment. He pulled her closer, his fingers digging slightly into her side. Smile, Genevieve. The cameras are to your left. Look happy. Look like you are glowing. Genevieve forced the corners of her mouth upward. It felt unnatural, like wearing a mask that was too small. They moved through the crowd, stopping every few feet to exchange hollow pleasantries with investors and board members. Dominique was in his element. He was charming, magnetic, and commanding. I introduced Genevieve as my lovely wife, but barely looked at her. She was a prop, a symbol of stability to reassure the shareholders that the Blackwood Empire was grounded in family values. But Genevieve felt the eyes on her. The women in their silk dresses whispered behind jeweled hands. They looked at her stomach, then at her face, searching for cracks. In this circle, weakness was blood in the water, and Genevieve felt like she was bleeding. They stopped near the center of the room, beneath the massive crystal chandelier. Dominique was laughing at a joke made by a banking executive, when the atmosphere in the room suddenly shifted. The conversation nearest to the entrance died down, followed by a ripple of silence that spread outward like a wave. Heads turned, the air grew heavy with anticipation. Genevieve followed the gaze of the crowd. Vanessa, Art, Ada arrived. She stood in the archway of the ballroom, pausing just long enough to ensure every eye was fixed upon her. In a sea of black, gold, and navy, Vanessa was a sock of vibrant crimson. Her dress was a masterpiece of defiance, a red silk that clung to her body like a second skin, with a neckline that plunged dangerously low and a slit that rose high up her thigh. It was not a dress for a family Christmas party, it was a dress for a seduction. Dominique went still beside Genevieve. His grip on her arm loosened, then fell away completely, his entire body oriented toward the door, drawn by an invisible magnetic force. Vanessa began to move. She did not walk, she prowled. She cut through the crowd with supreme confidence, the guests parting for her as if she were royalty. Her dark hair cascaded over her bare shoulders, and her lips were painted the exact same shade as her dress. She looked dangerous. She looked victorious. Genevieve felt a cold knot form in her stomach. This was the woman her husband came home smelling of. This was the woman who was helping them plot to steal her child. Seeing her in the flesh, breathing the same air, was a violation Genevieve had not fully prepared for. Vanessa walked straight toward them. She did not hesitate. She stopped 3 feet away, entering their personal space with a smile that was sharp enough to cut glass. Dominique, Vanessa sighed. Her voice was smooth, rich, and intimate. She ignored the surrounding guests, creating a private bubble that included only the 3 of them. Vanessa, Dominique breathed. His eyes devoured her. For a second, I forgot where I was. I forgot the investors, I forgot his pregnant wife, standing inches away. I looked at Vanessa with a mixture of anger and pride, as if she were a prize I had won. You look stunning. I tried my best, Vanessa replied playfully. Only then did she turn her gaze to Genevieve. The warmth vanished from her eyes, replaced by a cold, predatory assessment. She looked Genevieve up and down, lingering on the baby bump with a look of distaste before meeting Genevieve's eyes. And this must be the wife. Genevieve, is it? Mrs. Blackwood, Genevieve corrected, her voice trembling slightly but audible. Vanessa laughed softly. Of course. Mrs. Blackwood. I am. Vanessa Art, the new head of marketing. I work very closely with your husband, late nights, early mornings. You know how demanding it can be. The double meaning hung in the air, toxic and undeniable. Genevieve felt the insult land like a slap. I have heard, Genevieve said, struggling to keep her composure. Dominique mentions work often. He rarely mentions his employees. Vanessa smiled widened. She stepped closer, extending a hand. Genevieve had no choice but to take it. Vanessa's skin was cool, her grip surprisingly strong. As they shook hands, Vanessa leaned in slightly, invading Genevieve's personal space. Oh, I am sure he does not mention everything, Vanessa murmured, just loud enough for Genevieve to hear. Some things are better kept private, do you not agree? Dominique cleared his throat, sensing the tension but doing nothing to defend his wife. Vanessa has been instrumental in our 4th quarter growth. She is a vital part of the family business. I am sure she is, Genevieve sighed, pulling her hand back as if she had touched something burned. Well, Vanessa said, turning her attention back to Dominique and brushing a piece of invisible lint from his lapel, a gesture so familiar and possessive that several guests nearby exchanged shocked glances. Sabe me a dance later, Dominique. I would hate for this dress to go to waste. I will see what I can do, Dominique promised, his voice dropping an octave. Vanessa winked at him, cast one last pitiful look at Genevieve, and sauntered away toward the bar. Dominique watched her go, his eyes following the sway of her hips until she disappeared into the crowd. Genevieve stood there, frozen. The humiliation was burning her skin. He had not just greeted a colleague, he had publicly displayed his desire for his mistress in front of his wife. Dominique, Genevieve whispered. Everyone saw that. He turned on her, the charm vanishing instantly. His face was a mask of annoyance. So what? A boss greeting an employee. Stop being paranoid, Genevieve. You are imagining things again. She touched you, Genevieve argued. She flirted with you. She is friendly, Dominique snapped. She is European, they are tactile people, stop making a scene. Go get a drink. Water. And stay out of the way until you can fix that sour expression on your face. He turned his back on her and walked away in the direction Vanessa had gone, leaving Genevieve standing alone in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by hundreds of people but completely, utterly isolated. The ballroom felt suffocating. The air was thick with the scent of pine and expensive perfumes, a cloying mixture that made Genevieve feel nauseous. She needed to escape the prying eyes, if only for a moment. She navigated the edge of the room, moving toward the dessert tables which were set up near the towering Christmas tree. She reached for a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray, her hands shaking. She took a sip, trying to calm the racing of her heart. She told herself to be strong. She told herself she was doing this for her baby. But the image of Dominique looking at Vanessa, looking at her with the passion he used to save for Genevieve was a knife, twisting in her chest. You look ridiculous standing there all alone. The voice came from behind her, sharp and sudden. Genevieve turned to see Victoria Blackwood standing there. Her mother-in-law held a glass of white wine, her posture rigid, but Victoria was not alone. Vanessa had joined her. The two women stood side by side, a united front of malice. He was just getting some water, Genevieve said, placing the glass down on the table next to a display of chocolate reindeer. He needed a moment. You have been taking moments all night, Victoria criticized. You are not mingling. You are not charming the guests. You are lurking in the shadows like a unwanted ghost. Vanessa took a step forward, swirling the red wine in her glass. Up close, her beauty was intimidating. She smelled of wild orchids, the same scent that stained Dominique's pillows. Perhaps she is tired, Victoria, Vanessa said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Pregnancy takes such a toll on the body. Look at her. Her ankles are swollen. Her face is puffy. It must be exhausting carrying all that. Wait. Genevieve straightened her spine. I am carrying Dominique's son. It is a weight I am happy to bear. Vanessa smirked. Dominique's son. Yes. He talks about the boy often. He is very excited to be a father. He told me just last week, while we were lying in bed at the Four Seasons, that he hopes the boy has his eyes. The world seemed to stop. The background noise of the party faded into a dull roar. Genevieve stared at Vanessa, her breath catching in her throat. The Four Seasons. Dominique had told Genevieve he was in a board meeting in London last week. You are lying, Genevieve whispered, though she knew she was not. Amy, Vanessa stepped closer, invading Genevieve's space again. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. He has a small scar on his left hip, from a skiing accident when he was 20. He hates it when people touch it. But, he lets me kiss it. Genevieve felt the blood drain from her face. That was a detail no one else would know. It was an intimate secret. Vanessa was not just admitting to the affair, she was flaunting the intimacy, using it as a weapon to gut Genevieve in the middle of a crowded room. Why are you telling me this? Genevieve asked, her voice trembling. Why are you doing this here? Because you need to know your place, Vanessa said, her eyes flashing with cruelty. You are the past, Genevieve. I am the future. Dominique does not want you. He tolerates you because of that baby. But once you give birth, you are gone. Genevieve looked at Victoria, silently begging for help, for some defense of the family sanctity, but Victoria simply took a sip of her wine and nodded in agreement. She's right, dear, Victoria said coldly. Dominique needs a partner who matches his ambition. Vanessa understands the business, she understands him, you. You were a sweet girl, but you are not cut out for this life. You are too fragile. I am his wife, Genevieve said, her voice rising slightly. We made vows. Vows are just words, Vanessa scoffed. Power is what matters. And you have none. Look at you. You are shaking. You are about to cry. You are weak. I am not weak, Genevieve sighed, clutching her stomach. I am protecting my family. You have no family, Victoria interjected. Not anymore. Dominique has made this choice. We have all made our choice. Guests nearby were starting to notice the confrontation. A hush was falling over the immediate area. People were glancing over their shoulders, sensing the drama unfolding near the Christmas tree. Genevieve felt trapped. On one side was the table, on the other were the two women who wanted to destroy her. I am leaving, Genevieve said. I am going to find my husband. Vanessa laude, a harsh sound. Your husband, sent us over here, wanted us to explain the reality of the situation to you. It would be kinder coming from women. That is a lie, Genevieve said, though a shade of doubt took root. Dominique's cruelty earlier made it plausible. Is it? Vanessa challenged. She raised her glass, the red liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. He is watching us right now. Look. Genevieve turned head. Across the room, Dominique was standing near the bar. He was holding a drink, looking directly at them. He did not look concerned. He did not look like he was coming to save her. He looked bored. He raised his glass slightly in their direction, a silent salute to the execution happening in the corner. The betrayal hit Genevieve harder than any physical blow. He knew. He had allowed this. He had sanctioned this torture. Se. Vanessa purred. He is waiting for you to break. He wants you to cause a scene. So he can tell the lawyers you are unstable. Look at my hysterical wife, he will say. She screamed at a Christmas party. She is unfit to be a mother. Genevieve realized the trap. If she yelled, if she cried, if she threw a drink, she gave them exactly what they needed. They were baiting her. They were poking a wounded animal, waiting for it to bite so they could put it down. She took a deep breath, forcing her hands to unclench. She turned back to Vanessa and Victoria. I will not give you the satisfaction, Genevieve said quietly. I will not break. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. The calm defiance. Annoyed. Her. She had expected tears. She had expected a tantrum. Silence was not part of the script. You think you are so dignified, Vanessa spat. Standing there in your white dress like a virgin saint. You are pathetic. Please move, Genevieve said, attempting to step around them. I am not done talking to you, Vanessa snapped. She stepped into Genevieve's path, blocking her exit. You need to understand that this marriage is over. Tonight is the end. Excuse me, Genevieve sighed louder, drawing the attention of a waiter who paused nearby. Vanessa's frustration boiled over. The control she prided herself on slept. She did not want to let Genevieve walk away with her head held high. She wanted to humiliate her, she wanted to mark her. Vanessa looked at the glass of champagne Genevieve had left on the table, then she looked at the red wine in her own hand, a wicked idea formed in her eyes. You want to leave? Vanessa asked softly. Fine. But let us give you something to remember us by. The air in the corner of the room grew static. The musicians seemed to be playing miles away. Genevieve saw the muscle in Vanessa's forearm tense. She saw the shifting weight. She knew what was coming, but she was too slow to stop it. Vanessa pulled her arm back, the crystal glass catching the light of the chandelier, transforming the festive atmosphere into the setting of a nightmare. The verbal streak was over. The physical one was about to begin. The motion was so fast that Genevieve barely had time to blink. One moment, Vanessa was standing there with a look of supreme arrogance, and the next, the contents of her glass were airborne. The liquid, a dark, rich vintage of red wine, hit Genevieve square in the chest. The impact was shocking. The cold liquid soaked instantly through the delicate fabric of her white dress, splashing up onto her neck and chin. It felt like a physical slap. The stain bloomed rapidly across her bodice, a violent crimson mark against the pristine white silk, looking for all the world like a fresh, gaping wound. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the ballroom. The string quartet, sensing the sudden shift in the atmosphere, faltered, and then stopped playing altogether. The silence that followed was deafening, heavier than any noise. It was the silence of hundreds of people holding their breath, witnessing a social execution. Genevieve gasped, her hands flying up to seal the face too late, the wine dripped from her chin. She stood froze, her mind struggling to comprehend the sheer audacity of the assault. She was the hostess. She was pregnant. This was her home. And yet, she stood there, drenched and humiliated, while the aggressor smiled. Vanessa did not look apologetic. She looked exhilarated. She held the empty glass loosely in her fingers, tilting her head as she surveyed her handiwork. Oh there, Vanessa said, Her voice projecting clearly in the silent room, my hand slipped. You really should not stand so close to people when you are so clumsy, Genevieve. The gaslighting was instant and public. But the humiliation was not over. Before Genevieve could even wipe the wine from her skin, Victoria stepped forward. The matriarch's face was composed, but her eyes glittered with malice. She held her own glass of white wine. She did not throw it, that would be too undignified for a Blackwood. Instead, she tipped her wrist with deliberate, calculated precision. The white wine poured over Genevieve's shoulder, soaking into the sleeve of her dress, mixing with the red to create a sodden, sticky mess. The cold seeped into her skin, making her shiver violently. You look overheated, dear, Victoria said, her voice easy loud. This should cool your temper. We cannot have you looking flushed in front of the investors. Genevieve took a stumbling step back, her heel slipped on a droplet of wine on the marble floor, and she had to grab the edge of the dessert table to steady herself. Her other hand went instinctively to her belly, a protective gesture that every mother in the room recognized. What is wrong with you? Genevieve whispered, her voice trembling with shock. I am carrying your grandchild. You are making a mess, Victoria replied, turning to the nearest waiter. Bring a towel. The floor is slippery. We cannot have a lawsuit if someone important falls. She did not ask for a towel for Genevieve. She asked for a towel for the floor. The guests were paralyzed. They were the elite of the city, senators, CEOs, socialists, people who prided themselves on decorum. They had seen rivalries, they had seen arguments, but they had never seen a public physical assault on a pregnant woman by her own family. Someone near the front dropped a fork. The clatter echoed like a gunshot. She is shaking, a woman in a blue velvet dress whispered to husband. Why is no one helping her? Stay out of it, the husband said back. That is the Blackwood family. You do not get between them. Genevieve felt tears pricking her eyes, hot and stinging against the cold wine on her face. She refused to let them fall. She knew that if she cried, if she collapsed, she would give them exactly what they wanted. They wanted her broken. They wanted her hysterical. Vanessa laughed softly, a sound that grated on Genevieve's nerves. Look at her. She looks like a drowned rat. Dominique certainly has a type, and it is apparently pathetic. Genevieve wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing the wine. She looked around the room, searching for a friendly face, for anyone who would step in and say this was wrong. But the guests looked away. They were voyeurs, fascinated by the car crash but unwilling to get blood on their hands. Is this entertainment for you? Genevieve asked the room, her voice gaining a little strength. Is this what the Blackwood legacy stands for? Bullying a pregnant woman? Victoria stepped in close, her perfume cloying. Be quiet, you foolish girl. You are embarrassing yourself. Go upstairs before you ruin the carpet. I will not go anywhere, Genevieve said, her breathing ragged, not until I speak to my husband. Oh, he is coming, Vanessa teased, pointing a manicured finger across the room. But I do not think he is coming to comfort you, Genevieve turned. Dominique was cutting through the crowd, he moved with a long, angry stride. His face was thunderous. For a fleeting, foolish second, Genevieve's heart leaped. He looked angry. Surely, no matter his affairs, no matter his coldness, he would not stand for this. He was a man. He was a father to be. Seeing his wife assaulted in public had to trigger some protective instinct. Dominique, Genevieve breathed as he approached. Dominique, please. He reached the circle of humiliation. He looked at the wine dripping from her dress. He looked at the red stain on her chest. He looked at her wet hair. And then, he looked at Vanessa. He did not look at Vanessa with anger. He looked at her with concern. Are you all right? Dominique asked Vanessa. The world tilted on its axis. Genevieve felt as if the floor had dissolved beneath her feet. She bumped into me, Vanessa led smoothly, clutching her pearls. She was flailing her arms, screaming about me being a homewrecker. I spilled my drink in self-defense. It was terrifying. Dominique. She's lying, Genevieve cried out, the shock finally breaking her composure. She threw it at me, they both did. Dominique, look at me, I am soaked. Dominique turned to his wife slowly. His eyes were dead. There was no light in them, no recognition of the woman he had once married, there was only annoyance. Lower your voice, Dominique said. You are making a spectacle of yourself. I am the spectacle. Genevieve asked, her voice cracking. They attacked me. Dominique shook head, A sound of profound exhaustion, e asusted scufflings, looking around at the guests as if apologizing for an unruly pet. I am sorry everyone, Dominic announced, his voice projecting charm to the room. My wife has been unwell lately. The pregnancy has been difficult on her nerves. Please, continue the party. The orchestra, if you would. A wave a hand, dismissing her pain as a medical condition. The orchestra, unsure of what else to do, began to play a hesitant waltz. The music covered the silence, but it could not wash away the stain. Genevieve stood there, trembling not from the cold, but from the realization that the man standing in front of her was not just a bad husband. He was a monster. The music provided a thin veil of normalcy, but no one was dancing. Every eye was still glued to the drama unfolding near the Christmas tree. Dominic took a step closer to Genevieve. To the observers, it might have looked like an intimate moment between husband and wife, but up close, the menace radiating from him was palpable. You have ruined the evening, Dominic whispered, his voice low and venomous. I told you to be perfect. I told you to smile. And instead, you provoke my mother and Vanessa into a scene. I provoked them, Genevieve stared at him, incredulous. I was drinking water, they cornered me. Dominic, Vanessa told me about the Four Seasons. She told me about the scar on your hip. Dominic did not even flinch. He did not deny it. He simply looked bored. So? You know. Congratulations. Does hearing it out loud make you feel better? It makes me feel sick, she spat. How can you stand there and defend her? Because she knows how to behave, Dominic retorted. She knows how to be an asset. Look at you, Genevieve. You are a mess. You are crying. You are stained. You look weak. I need a woman who commands a room, not one who cowers in the corner. Genevieve felt a hardness settle in her chest, replacing the heartbreak. I am carrying your son. And that is the only reason you are still standing in this house, Dominic said brutally. He leaned in closer, until his lips were inches from her ear. Listen to me very carefully. You are going to go upstairs, you are going to change. And you are going to stay in your room until everyone leaves. If you say another word, if you try to garner sympathy from these people, I will cut you off. You cannot do that, she whispered. I can, he promised. I will freeze the joint accounts, I will cancel your credit cards. And when that baby is born, I will have a team of lawyers so expensive that you will be buried in legal fees for the next decade. I will paint you as mentally unstable. I will use tonight, this little outburst as proof that you cannot be trusted with an infant. You will never see him. The threat was specific, calculated, and terrifying. He was weaponizing her motherhood against her. Genevieve pulled back, looking at his face. It was a handsome face, the face she had fallen in love with, but it was twisted now with arrogance and cruelty. You would take a child from his mother? She asked. I would protect my heir from a hysterical woman, he corrected. Then, to add the final nail to the coffin of their marriage, Dominic turned away from her. He reached out and took Vanessa's hand. He pulled her to his side. It was not a subtle gesture. He wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close against him. Vanessa, be a med. She rested head on his shoulder, looking at Genevieve with a triumphant smirk. Come, Vanessa, Dominic said loudly, enough for the nearby guests to hear. Let us get you another drink. You must be shaken up, after being accosted. I am a little faint, Vanessa said, playing the part perfectly. Thank you for protecting me, Dominic. Victoria nodded in approval. Go on, son. Take care of our guest. I will make sure the staff cleans up this mess. She gestured vaguely at Genevieve as if she were a spilled tray of appetizers. The trio turned their backs on her. The image was seared into Genevieve's mind, her husband, his mistress, and his mother, walking away together, united in their cruelty. They were a wall of power, wealth, and influence. And she was standing alone, dripping wet, shivering, with nothing but the truth on her side. But as they walked away, something shifted in the room. The guests were no longer just shocked. They were uncomfortable. The cruelty had been too open, too raw. Dominic had overplayed his hand. He had assumed that his money bought him immunity from judgment, that people would side with him simply because he was a Blackwood. But watching a pregnant woman be threatened and abandoned while her husband embraced another woman, that crossed a line even for the hated elite. That is disgusting, a man whispered near the buffet. He is threatening her, another woman murmured. Did you see his face? Genevieve stood her ground. She did not run. She did not go upstairs. As ordered. She felt the baby kick a strong, solid thump against her ribs. It was a reminder. She was not just Genevieve anymore. She was a fortress. She watched them walk toward the bar, laughing as if they had just won a game. Let them laugh, she thought. Let them think they have won. She reached into her pocket, the pocket of her dress that was luckily dry, and her fingers brushed against her phone. She didn't pull it out yet. She didn't need to, she just needed to wait. Because Dominique had forgotten one thing. He had forgotten who her father was. He had forgotten that while the Blackwoods had money, her family had something else. They had command. And the doors were about to open. Genevieve took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of pine and betrayal. She wiped the wine from her chin with a slow, deliberate movement. She lifted her head. She did not fix her hair. She did not try to hide the stain. She wore the red wine like a badge of war. She turned to face the crowd, not as a victim seeking pity, but as a witness demanding attention. I am not leaving, she said to the empty space where husband had stood. And then, the heavy double doors, at the far end of the ballroom groaned. The sound was low and ominous, cutting through the walls. The handle turned. Genevieve smiled. It was a small, sad, terrifying smile. Help had arrived. And it was wearing a uniform. Genevieve did not move. The orchestra continued to play a hesitant, uneven melody, but the rhythm of the party had been irrevocably broken. She stood near the dessert table, her dress stained crimson and gold, a living monument to the cruelty of the Blackwood family. Most women would have run. Most women would have fled up the stairs to hide their shame in the dark. But Genevieve felt a strange, cold clarity settle over her. If she ran now, she admitted defeat. If she'd, she allowed them to write the narrative that she was hysterical and unstable. She remained rooted to the spot, her hand resting gently on her stomach. Across the room, Vanessa watched her. The mistress was clearly agitated that her victory was not complete. She had expected Genevieve to dissolve into tears and flee. The fact that Genevieve was still standing there, staring back with dry eyes, was an insult to Vanessa's ego. Vanessa whispered something to Dominique. He shrugged, looking bored, and turned back to his drink. Emboldened by his indifference, Vanessa handed her glass to a waiter and began to walk back toward Genevieve. The crowd parted for her, but this time, the movement was not out of admiration, it was out of morbid curiosity. Vanessa stopped 2 feet from Genevieve. Up close, the malice in her eyes was undisguised. You really do not know when to quit, do you? Vanessa sneered. Standing here. Like a martyr. Do you think these people feel sorry for you? They are laughing at you. Look at yourself. You are a stain on this beautiful evening. The only stain here is you, Genevieve replied, her voice steady. You can wear the most expensive silk in the world, Vanessa, but it does not cover up what you are. You are a thief. You steal husbands because you cannot find a man of your own who respects you. Vanessa's face contorted. The truth struck a nerve. She took a step closer, invading Genevieve's personal space aggressively. You have a big mouth for a woman who is about to be homeless. Dominique told me the plan. Once the baby is born, you will be out on the street. He calls you a burden, Genevieve. He says sleeping with you was a chore. The words were designed to cripple, but Genevieve had gone numb to the insults. He can say whatever he wants. But he is still married to me. And right now, you are just the cheap entertainment. Vanessa snapped. The veneer of social grace shattered completely. You ungrateful little. Vanessa reached out. It was not a slap this time. It was a shove. She placed both hands on Genevieve's shoulders and pushed with all her strength. It happened in slow motion. Genevieve's heels were already unsteady on the wine-slicked marble floor. The force of the shove threw her center of gravity backward. She gasped, her arms flailing, trying to find purchase on the air. There was nothing to grab. She fell. It was not a graceful swoon. It was a hard, brutal impact. Genevieve twisted her body instinctively as she went down, taking the brunt of the fall on her hip and elbow to protect her stomach. She hit the floor with a sickening thud. Her head snapped back, barely missing the sharp edge of the table leg. A scream tore through the room. It came from a guest, not Genevieve. Genevieve lay on the cold, wet marble, the breath knocked out of her lungs. Pine radiated up her side. For a terrifying second, the world went black around the edges. Her first thought, her only thought, was the baby. She curled into a ball, clutching her belly, waiting for a movement, a kick, a sign of life. "Oh my God," a woman shouted. She pushed her. She pushed a pregnant woman. The paralysis that had gripped the guests finally broke. The horror was too absolute to ignore. Several men stepped forward, their faces pale. Vanessa stood over Genevieve, breathing hard. For a split second, she looked triumphant, then, she looked at the faces around her and realized she had gone too far. Panic flickered in her eyes. "She slipped," Vanessa cried out, her voice shrill. "I barely touched her. She is faking it. Get up, Genevieve." Dominic rushed over. He did not run to check on his wife. He ran to manage the damage. He stood over Genevieve, looking down at her with a mixture of annoyance and panic. "Get up," Dominic said. "Stop acting, you are making a scene." Genevieve looked up at him from the floor, her elbow was throbbing. Her dress was ruined. But inside, the baby shifted. A strong, defiant kick. She was alive. The baby was alive. "She pushed me," Genevieve whistled. "And you are telling me to get up? You provoked her," Dominic shouted, losing his composure for the first time. "If you had just gone upstairs when he told you to, none of this would have happened. This is your fault." The cruelty of the statement hung in the air like smoke. He was blaming the victim while she lay on the floor. "That is enough," a male voice shouted from the crowd. An older senator stepped forward, his face red with anger. "Dominic, help your wife up. Have you lost your mind?" Dominic glared at the senator. "Stay out of this. This is a family matter." "It is an assault," the senator retorted. Vanessa backed away, looking for an exit. Victoria appeared, looking horrified not at the violence, but at the potential lawsuit. "Everyone, please," Victoria pleaded, waving her hands. "It was an accident. The floor was wet, Genevieve is caused clumsy." Genevieve gritted her teeth. She placed her hands on the cold floor and pushed herself up, her body screamed in protest, but she refused to let them see her stay down. She rose slowly, painfully, until she was standing again. She swayed slightly, but she stood. She looked at Dominic, then at Vanessa, then at Victoria. "I am not clumsy," Genevieve said, her voice ringing clear and cold through the ballroom, "and I am not leaving." "You are insane," Vanessa muttered, though she looked terrified. "No," Genevieve said. "I am simply waiting." "Waiting for what?" Dominic demanded. "For me to throw you out myself?" Genevieve did not answer. She looked past him, toward the grand entrance of the ballroom. As if on cue, the sound of heavy metal latches disengaging echoed from the main doors. The sound was heavy and final, like the closing of a tomb or the opening of a vault. The massive double doors, at the far end of the ballroom, which had been shut tight against the winter night, groaned as they were pushed inward. A gust of freezing wind swept into the room, carrying snowflakes that swirled in the warm light of the chandeliers. The candles on the tables flickered wildly, some were extinguished instantly. The sudden drop in temperature made the guests shiver. Every head turned toward the entrance. A figure stood in the doorway, framed by the swirling snow and the darkness of the night outside. He was a mountain of a man. He wore a heavy black military-style overcoat that fell to his knees, the collar turned up against the wind. His hair was silver, cut short and severe. His face was weathered, carved from granite and discipline, marked by a scar running down his left cheek. It was General Richard Sterling. The room did not just go silent, it went still. This was not a socialite. This was not a CEO. This was a man who had commanded armies, a man whose name was whispered in corridors of power with a mixture of reverence and fear. He had been retired for 5 years, living a reclusive life, but his presence was as formidable as ever. He did not wait to be announced. He stepped into the ballroom, his heavy boots stood against the marble floor with a rhythmic, terrifying cadence. Behind him, 4 men in dark suits entered. They were not catering staff. They moved with the precise, lethal grace of private security or perhaps something more specialized. They fanned out, silently securing the perimeter of the room. General Sterling did not look at the guests. He did not look at decorations. His steel grey eyes scanned the room with the precision of a hawk hunting prey. His gaze swept over the crowd and locked onto the scene near the dessert table. He saw the red wine stains. He saw the wet hair. He saw the way his daughter was clutching her side, favoring her left leg. The general's expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. He began to walk. The crowd parted instantly. People scrambled to get out of his way, knocking over chairs in their haste. No one wanted to be in the path of the storm that was coming. Dominique, who had been shouting moments before, went deathly pale. He took a half step back, his arrogance evaporating. Victoria dropped her glass, it shattered on the floor, but no one looked at it. Vanessa looked like she wanted to vomit. The general did not stop until he was standing directly in front of Genevieve. Up close, he looked even bigger, a towering shield of black wool and cold fury. He looked at the wine on her dress. He looked at the bruise already forming on her arm. "Father," Genevieve whispered, her voice finally breaking. The strength that had held her up for hours finally cracked in the presence of the one man she knew would never hurt her. General Sterling reached out. His large, callous hand cupped her cheek with surprising tenderness. He wiped a smear of wine from her chin with a stamp. "I am, Gen," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in her chest. "I am, sorry, it was, late. The snow on the pass was heavy. They pushed me," she sobbed, collapsing slightly against him. "They pushed me, Dad." The general caught her, supporting her weight effortlessly with one arm. He held her there for a moment, letting her breathe, letting her feel safe. Then, slowly, he raised his head. He looked at Dominique. "Who touched her?" the general asked. He did not shout. He did not scream. He spoke the words with a calm, conversational tone that was infinitely more terrifying than any yell. Dominique swallowed hard. He tried to summon his bravado, tried to remember that he was a CEO in his own home. "General Sterling. This is a misunderstanding. Genevieve has been emotional." She tripped. "We were just trying to help her up." The general stared at him. "You were standing over her while she was on the floor. I saw you shouting." He was panic-stricken, Dominique lied, his voice trembling. He was worried about the baby. "The baby," the general repeated flatly. "There you are. So desperate to steal?" Dominique froze. "I do not know what you mean. I know everything, Dominique," the general said. "I know about the lawyers. I know about the trust fund manipulation. I know about the mistress." He turned his gaze to Vanessa. She shrank back, hiding behind Dominique's shoulder. "And you must be the woman who thinks she can assault my daughter and take her place," the general said. "I did not mean to push her." Vanessa cried out, her defense crumbling. "It was an accident. She came at me." "She came at you," the general looked at Genevieve, who was clearly injured and exhausted, then back at Vanessa, who was pristine in her red silk. "My daughter is 6 months pregnant. You pushed her onto a marble floor. In my world, we call that an attempt on a life." "That is ridiculous," Victoria interjected, stepping forward to defend the family name. "General, you cannot come into my house and make accusations. This is a private party. You are trespassing." General Sterling looked at Victoria with profound disgust. "Your house? Victoria. This estate was purchased with the dowry my wife left for Genevieve. The deed is in a trust. Dominique is merely a trustee. This house does not belong to you. It belongs to my daughter." A gasp went through the room. The guests whispered furiously. The Blackwood fortune was a lie. The house belonged to the wife they were abusing. Dominique's face turned a shade of gray that matched the winter sky. "That is not true. I manage the assets." "You managed them poorly," the general said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, sleek device. He pressed a button. Suddenly, the large projection screen that had been set up for the corporate presentation flickered to life, but instead of quarterly earnings, a video feed appeared. It was grainy, black and white, but clear. It was security footage from 10 minutes ago. The room watched in silence as the screen showed Vanessa sobbing Genevieve. They watched Genevieve fall hard. They watched Dominique scream at her. They watched the cruelty in high definition. "I had my team tap into your security feed an hour ago," the general explained calmly. "I wanted to see how you were treating her." He looked at the crowd. "You all saw it. You stood there and watched. You drank their wine and let them abuse a pregnant woman." The guests looked down at their shoes, as amazed. The general turned back to Dominique. He released Genevieve gently, stepping forward so that he was towering over his son-in-law. "You have 5 minutes, the general said. 5 minutes for what?" Dominique stammered. "To pack a bag and get out of my daughter's house," the general said. "You, your mother, and your mistress. If you are not off this property in 5 minutes, I will have my men remove you. And they will not be gentle. You cannot kick me out. Dominique shouted, desperation taking over. I am the CEO of Blackwood Industries. Check your email, Dominique, the general said softly. The board of directors just received a copy of this video. And a copy of your fraudulent accounting records that my analysts found this morning. Dominique checked his phone. His hand shook so badly he almost dropped it. I read the notification. His knees buckled. It is over, the general said. Now. Get out. The projection screen dominated the ballroom, transforming the festive atmosphere into a courtroom. The footage played in a loop, grainy but undeniably clear. It showed the moment of impact over and over again. Vanessa's hands extending. The violent sob. Genevieve stumbling backward, her heels slipping on the spilled wine, and her body hitting the marble floor with a force that made the guests in the room wince in sympathy. General Sterling did not turn the screen off. He wanted the image burned into the retinas of every socialite, investor, and board member present. Turn it off, Dominique screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. He lunged toward the control panel near the stage, but one of the general's security details stepped into his path. The guard did not speak. He simply crossed his arms, his chest a wall of solid muscle that Dominique had no hope of moving. Let it play, General Sterling commanded. His voice was calm, cutting through Dominique's panic like a blade. Let them see exactly what kind of man you are, Dominique. You stand there and claim my daughter is hysterical? You claim she slept. The camera does not lie. Vanessa was trembling so violently that the sequins on her red dress shimmered like shivering scales. She looked at the screen, seeing her own cruelty reflect back at her. The confidence she had worn all evening stripped away, leaving her naked in her guilt. It looks worse than it was, Vanessa stammered, turning to the nearest group of guests. The angle. The camera angle is misleading. He was trying to catch her. We can see your hands, Vanessa, a woman in the front row said coldly. You pushed her. You shoved a pregnant woman. The judgment of the crowd was swift and brutal. The elite circle that Dominique had spent years cultivating, the people whose approval he craved, were now looking at him with open revulsion. They began to pull out their phones. It started with 1 or 2, then a dozen, then 50. They were not recording the screen anymore, they were recording Dominique and Vanessa. The live stream of their downfall had begun. Victoria Blackwood, realizing the ship was sinking, tried to separate herself from the wreckage. She stepped away from Dominique and Vanessa, smoothing her skirt. He had nothing to do with this, Victoria announced to the room. I was shocked, I scolded them immediately. General Sterling laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. He tapped the remote in his hand. The footage on the screen changed. Now, it showed the minutes prior to the show. It showed Victoria pouring her white wine onto Genevieve's shoulder. It showed her sneering, her mouth moving in words that, while silent on the video, were clearly hateful. Victoria froze. Her betrayal was documented. You poured alcohol on my daughter, the general said. You stood by and watched your son threaten her. You are just as guilty as the mistress. This is illegal. Dominique shouted, pointing a shaking finger at the general. You cannot hack my security system. I will sue you. I will sue you for every penny you have. The general stepped closer to Dominique. You seem to be confused about who owns what, Dominique. You keep saying my house and my security system. Let us clarify the ledger. General Sterling turned to the crowd, addressing the investors directly. 30 years ago, when Genevieve was born, my late wife established a generational trust. This estate, the land it sits on, and the majority shares of the holding company were placed in that trust. When Dominique married my daughter, he signed a prenuptial agreement that he clearly did not read closely. Dominique's eyes widened. He read it. It said, he had executive control. It said you had executive management privileges, the general corrected, contingent on your marital status and good conduct. The moment you engaged in infidelity, and certainly the moment you allowed physical harm to come to the beneficiary, the morality clause was triggered. The general paused, letting the weight of the legal reality settle over the room. You do not own this house, Dominique. You are a guest. And as of tonight, your guest privileges are revoked. The trust reverts to sole control of Genevieve Sterling. You are trespassing. The room erupted in whispers. The revelation was catastrophic for Dominique. His entire identity, his power, his standing in the business world, was built on the illusion that he owned the Blackwood fortune. The general had just revealed that Dominique was nothing more than a caretaker who had been fired. "That is a lie," Dominique whispered, but he looked like a man who had been punched in the gut. "The board. The board loves me. The board loves profit," the general said. "And they hate liability. A CEO, who assaults his pregnant wife on video is a liability. A CEO who does not even own his own headquarters is a joke." Vanessa looked at Dominique. The adoration in her eyes was gone, replaced by a dawning horror. She had bet everything on this man. She had humiliated herself, attacked Genevieve, and risked her reputation because she thought Dominique was the king of the city. Now, she was realizing he was a pauper in a stolen suite. "You told me you owned the estate," Vanessa said at him. "You told me the prenuptial agreement was just a formality." "Shut up, Vanessa," Dominique snapped, sweat beading on his forehead. "Do not tell me to shut up," she screamed, her voice shrill. "I ruined my reputation for you. You said you were untouchable." "The rats are starting to eat each other," the general murmured to Genevieve. Genevieve watched them. She felt a strange sense of detachment. The man she had cried over, the man she had begged for affection, was dissolving before her eyes. He looked small. He looked pathetic. "Father," Genevieve said softly. "I want them to leave. I do not want to look at them anymore." "They are leaving," the general promised. He signaled to his security team. "Escort Mr. Blackwood and his guests to the gate. They are not to take anything but the clothes on their backs. No bags, no computers, no jewelry. You cannot do that." Victoria shrieked. "My diamonds are upstairs." "Your diamonds were likely bought with company funds," the general replied, "which are currently under audit. If you want them, you can file a claim with the police when they arrive." "Polices?" Dominique choked out. "Oh yes," the general said, checking his watch. "They should be pulling into the driveway right about now." The sound of sirens cut through the winter night, a wailing harmony that grew louder with every passing second. Inside the ballroom, the sound of digital chaos began to compete with the approaching police. It started with a single notification chime, then another. Then a cascade of beeps, buzzes, and ringtones echoed from the pockets and purses of every guest in the room. The video had gone viral. Dominique's phone, which he was still clutching in his trembling hand, began to vibrate incessantly. It was not just a text message, it was a flood. He looked down at the screen. "Alert Blackwood Industries, stock plummets 12% in after-hours trading. Board of Directors emergency meeting called. Email, resignation demand, subject, immediate effect." The color drained from his face completely. He tapped the screen frantically, trying to stop the bleeding, but the digital world moved faster than he could think. "It is trending," a young woman near the bar whispered, holding up her phone. "The hashtag Blackwood assault is the #1 topic in the country." Vanessa grabbed her own phone from her clutch. She unlocked it and let out a strangled cry. Her social media, usually a shrine to her vanity and curated lifestyle, was being bombarded with thousands of comments. "Monster, abuser, homewrecker." Her brand deals were vanishing in real time. A prominent fashion label she modeled for had already posted a tweet distancing themselves from her. "My career," Vanessa sobbed, looking at Dominique with pure hatred. "You destroyed my career." "I destroyed it." Dominique laughed, a manic, broken sound. "You pushed her, you just had to push her. If you had just kept your hands to yourself, we could have spun this. You stood there and let me do it," Vanessa screamed back, shoving him in the chest. "You said she was weak, you said nobody cared about her, you lied to me about everything. I gave you everything." Dominique roared. "The trips, the jewelry, the apartment. And this is how you repay me. By making me look like a fool? You are a fool." Vanessa spat. "I never loved you. I loved the money, and now you do not even have that." The admission hung in the air, cold and brutal. The guests gasped. It was the final humiliation for Dominique. The woman he had destroyed his marriage for, the woman he had humiliated Genevieve to please, had just admitted she was nothing more than a mercenary. Genevieve watched from the safety of her father's arm. She should have felt pain, but all she felt was relief. The truth was out. The love story Dominique had tried to sell the world was a sham. Victoria tried to intervene, grabbing Dominique's arm. "Stop it, both of you. Do not say another word. The lawyers will fix this." "There are no lawyers, mother." Dominique yelled, pulling away from her. Look at the phone. The legal firm just dropped us. They cited a conflict of interest because the general is one of their biggest clients. Victoria turned to General Sterling, her face crumbling. Richard, please. We have known each other for decades. Do not destroy my son. I made a mistake. He is young. I can learn. He is 35 years old, Victoria, the general said coldly. He is not a child. He is a man who made a choice to be cruel. And you are a mother who chose to torment another mother. I have no mercy for you. The ballroom doors opened again, and this time, uniformed officers entered. There were 4 of them, looking serious and unamused. They walked straight to the center of the room. Dominique, Blackwood. The lead officer asked. Dominique straightened up, trying to regain a shred of dignity. I am. Listen, officer, this is a domestic dispute that has been blown out of proportion. We have seen the video, sir, the officer said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt, and we have a statement from the victim's father regarding financial fraud and coercion. You are under arrest for assault and embezzlement. Embezzlement? Dominique squeaked. The audit was thorough, the general added helpfully from the sidelines. Moving money from the charity fund to pay for Vanessa's apartment was a sloppy move, Dominique. The officer spun Dominique around and clicked the handcuffs onto his wrists. The sound was sharp. En final. Vanessa Hart, the officer continued. Vanessa tried to run. It was a foolish, instinctive reaction. She bolted toward the side exit, her red dress flying behind her. Grab her, the officer said. 2 officers intercepted her before she made it 10 feet. She kicked and screamed, creating a scene far more embarrassing than anything Genevieve had done. They dragged her back, sobbing and thrashing, and cuffed her hands behind her back. And, Victoria, Blackwood, the officer said, turning to the matriarch. We have a warrant for your arrest, as an accessory to the assault and for obstruction of justice. Victoria looked at the handcuffs with horror. I am a Blackwood. You cannot arrest me. We just did, the officer said, taking her arm firmly. The 3 of them, the husband, the mistress, the mother, stood in a line, bound by steel and shame. The flashes of cameras went off like strobe lights. The guests were documenting every second of the perp walk. Dominique looked over his shoulder one last time. He looked at Genevieve. She was standing tall, her hand on her stomach, her father beside her like a stone guardian. She did not look at him with anger anymore. She looked at him with pity. Genevieve, Dominique croaked. Please. Tell them to stop. Think of the baby. He needs a father. Genevieve took a step forward. The room went silent to hear her answer. He has a father, Genevieve said softly, touching her own heart. He has a grandfather. And he has a mother who loves him enough to keep him away from you. You are not a father, Dominique. You are just a lesson he had to learn. She turned her back on him. Take them away, General, Sterling ordered. The police escorted the trio out of the ballroom, through the crowd of whispering guests, and out into the cold, snowy night. As the doors closed behind them, the tension in the room broke. The guests began to applaud. It started slowly, then grew into a thunderous ovation. They were applauding the justice, yes, but they were mostly applauding the woman in the white dress who had walked through fire and come out unburned. Genevieve let out a long, shaky breath. Her legs felt weak. I need to sit down, she whispered. I have you, the general said, guiding her to a velvet chair. It is over, Gen. The cancer has been cut out. The company? She asked, looking at the screen where the stock was still plummeting. We will rebuild it, the general said. Or we will burn it down and start something new. It does not matter. What matters is that you are safe. And tomorrow, we file the papers to change your name back to Sterling. Genevieve looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring was still there. She slid it off her finger. It felt heavy, burdened with lies. She placed it on the table next to the empty champagne glasses. Sterling, she tested the name on her tongue. It sounded strong. It sounded like freedom. Yes, she said, a small smile touching her lips for the first time in months. Genevieve Sterling. The police station was a stark, brutal contrast to the velvet and gold of the Blackwood estate. There were no chandeliers there, only humming fluorescent lights that cast a sickly pallor over everything. The air did not smell of pine and roast duck, it smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Dominique Blackwood sat in an interrogation room, His tuxedo shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his expensive cufflinks confiscated and placed in a plastic bag. For the first time in his life, he was not in control. He had spent the last hour demanding to speak to the commissioner, to the mayor, to anyone who might recognize the power of his last name. But his demands had been met with silence. The door opened, and a detective walked in. He was a tired-looking man with a sick file tucked under his arm. He did not look impressed by Dominique's tailored suite. He pulled out a metal chair and sat down across the table, the scrape of the legs against the floor echoing loudly in the small room. "I demand my lawyer," Dominique said immediately, leaning forward. "You cannot hold me here. This is a misunderstanding. My wife is hysterical. She has a condition." The detective opened the file slowly. "We have spoken to your wife, Mr. Blackwood. She is currently at the hospital getting an ultrasound to ensure you did not kill her unborn child. She seems very lucid to me, and the video evidence we have is also quite clear." The video is taken out of context, Dominique lied, though sweat was beginning to bead on his forehead. "And the financial accusations? That is absurd. I am Deseo." "You were Deseo," the detective corrected. "I just got off the phone with the district attorney. It seems your father-in-law, General Sterling, has provided us with a very interesting paper trail. You have been moving funds from the charitable trust into an offshore account under the name UV Art Consulting. Is that correct?" Dominique went pale. "That was consulting phase. For marketing." "For marketing," the detective repeated flatly. "We found the lease agreement for a penthouse in the city paid for by that same account. Vanessa Hart lives there. That is embezzlement, Dominique. You were stealing from a charity to keep a mistress. It is complex," Dominique stammered. "You would not understand high finance." "I understand theft," the detective said. "And I understand assault. But here is the interesting part. We are currently interviewing Ms. Hart in the room next door. And unlike you, she does not seem to think it is complex at all. In fact, she is very eager to talk." Dominique's heart hammered against his ribs. "Vanessa? She will not say anything. She loves me." The detective smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "She asked for a plea deal 5 minutes after she sat down. She claims you orchestrated the entire attack. She claims you told her to provoke your wife. She says you promised her that if she helped you drive Genevieve into a mental breakdown, you would split the trust fund money with her. She is lying," Dominique shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "She is a liar. She pushed her. He had nothing to do with it." "So you admit she pushed her?" the detective asked quickly. Dominique froze. He realized too late that he had walked into a trap. Dominique faltered. "I admit nothing. Vanessa is singing like a bird, Dominique," the detective said, leaning back. "She gave us the text messages. The ones where you told her to make it look like an accident. The ones where you called your wife a cash cow that needed to be milked before being discarded. We have everything." Dominique slumped back in his chair. The reality of his situation crashed down on him. The arrogance that had shielded him for years was gone, stripped away by the cold hard facts of the law. He was not a tycoon anymore. He was just a criminal who had been caught. Meanwhile, in the adjacent room, Vanessa Hart was indeed talking. She was not the confident, prowling woman in the red dress anymore. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was a mess, and she was sobbing into a tissue. "He made me do it," Vanessa wept, looking at the female officer across from her. "He told me I was leaving her. He told me she was crazy. He said if he helped him get custody of the baby, we could be together. I was scared of him. He's powerful." "You pushed a pregnant woman, Vanessa," the officer said coldly. "That was your hand. Your choice." "He was under his influence," Vanessa pleaded. "He is manipulative. He threatened to cut me off if I did not help him. Please, I can testify against him. I can tell you about the fake accounts. I can tell you about the bribes he paid to the zoning board last year. Just do not send me to prison." The betrayal was absolute. The partnership built on greed and cruelty had dissolved the moment pressure was applied. They were turning on each other, tearing each other apart to save their own skins. Back in the hallway, Victoria Blackwood sat on a bench, handcuffed to a metal rail. She watched the officers moving back and forth, her face a mask of shock. She had called her personal lawyer 3 times, but he had not answered. She realized with a sinking feeling that the Blackwood name, once a golden key that opened every door, was now toxic. No one wanted to be associated with them. For the first time in decades, Victoria was just an old woman in a cold hallway, realizing that her son was not a king, but a failure, and she was the architect of her own ruin. The morning sun broke over the city, cold and bright, illuminating the frost on the windows of the private medical clinic. The room was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of medical equipment and the rhythmic sound of a heartbeat on the monitor. Genevieve lay in the hospital bed, a warm blanket tucked around her. She was bruised, her elbow was bandaged, and she was exhausted, but she was smiling. The heartbeat is strong, the doctor said, moving the wand over her stomach. The baby is perfectly fine. You are lucky, Mrs. Excuse me, Ms. Sterling. You took a hard fall, but your instincts protected him. Thank you, Genevieve whispered. Tears of relief pricked her eyes. That is all that matters. General Sterling sat in the chair beside the bed, watching the monitor with a look of intense focus. He had not slept all night. He had spent the hours on the phone with his legal team, orchestrating the final destruction of the Blackwood regime. The police have finished their preliminary booking, the general said quietly, once the doctor had left the room. Dominic has been denied by. The judge considered him a flight risk given the offshore accounts we uncovered. And Vanessa? Genevieve asked. She did not say the name with anger, but with a strange detachment, as if asking about a character in a bad movie she had once seen. Vanessa accepted a plea. Deal at 4 in the morning, the general said. She provided the district attorney with access to Dominic's private server. She gave them everything. The embezzlement, the fraud, the conspiracy to frame you. She will likely serve a reduced sentence for the assault in exchange for her testimony against Dominic. Genevieve nodded slowly. They turned on each other. Evil always eats itself when it gets angry, the general said. Victoria is currently being held for obstruction. Her social circle has abandoned her. I received a call from the chairwoman of the symphony board this morning. Victoria has been removed from the committee. She has lost the only thing she truly cared about, her status. It was a clean sweep. The justice was total. But there was one last thing Genevieve needed to do. I need to see him, Genevieve said. The general frowned. Gen, there is no need. The lawyers can handle the arraignment. You do not need to be in the same room as him ever again. Ido, Genevieve insisted, sitting up slowly. I need them to see me. Not on a screen, not through a lawyer. I need them to see me standing. I need to close the door myself. The general studied his daughter's face. He saw the resolve in her eyes, the same steel that ran through his own veins. He nodded once. Very well. The arraignment is in 2 hours. We will go. 2 hours later, the courtroom was packed. The press had descended like vultures. The scandal of the Christmas gala assault was the biggest story in the country. When Genevieve entered the courtroom, flanked by her father and 4 security guards, the room went silent. She was wearing a simple navy dress, her arm in a sling, but her head was high. She did not look like a victim. She looked like a king coming to pass sentence. Dominic was brought in through the side door. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. His hair was messy, his face unshaven. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a jittery, wide-eyed fear. When he saw the cameras, he tried to hide his face, but there was nowhere to go. He sat at the defense table, his hands cuffed to his waist. When he looked back and saw Genevieve in the front row, his expression crumbled. The judge read the charges. Assault in the 2nd degree. Grand larceny. Embezzlement. Conspiracy. The list went on and on. When the judge asked for a plea, Dominic's public defender, because his private lawyers had indeed stood up, not guilty, Your Honor. It was a formality, and everyone knew it. As the bailiffs prepared to take Dominic back to cell, he lunged toward the barrier separating him from the gallery. Genevieve, Dominic shouted, his voice desperate. Genevieve, please, tell them it was a mistake. I can fix this, we can go to therapy, do not let them take me away. The general moved to stand, but Genevieve placed a hand on his arm to stop him. She stood up herself. She walked to the railing. She looked down at the man who had been her husband, the man who had tormented her, the man who had tried to steal her child. The courtroom held its breath. You cannot fix this, Dominic, Genevieve said, her voice clear and calm in the silent room. Because nothing is broken. The trash has simply been taken out. I am the father of your child. Dominic pleaded, tears streaming down his face. You cannot do this to family. Family protects each other, Genevieve said. You are not my family. You are a stranger who lived in my house. And now, you are exactly where you belong. She looked at him one last time, memorizing the sight of his defeat so she would never fear him again. Then, she turned her back. Genevieve. Screamed as the bailiffs dragged him away. Genevieve. She did not look back. She walked down the center aisle of the courtroom, past the reporters, past the flashing cameras, and out the double doors. Outside, the snow was falling again, soft and white, covering the grime of the city. The air was cold and clean. Genevieve took a deep breath. It felt different than before. It felt lighter. The weight of the Blackwood name was gone. The fear of the future was gone. The general walked out behind her. He put a hand on her shoulder. Are you ready to go home? He asked. Not to the state, Genevieve said. Sell it. Burn it. I do not care. I do not want to live in a cage anymore, even a gilded one. We will find a new place, the general promised. Somewhere by the ocean, somewhere safe. Genevieve nodded. She placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the steady rhythm of life inside her. Yes, she said. Somewhere new. She stepped into the waiting car, leaving the winter behind her, ready to drive toward the spring. The nightmare was over. Her life had, finally, begun. 4 months had passed since the night of the Christmas gala, but to Genevieve, it felt like a lifetime ago. The winter snow had melted, replaced by the soft, salty breeze of early spring. She was no longer in the dark, oppressive hallways of the Blackwood estate. She was somewhere entirely new, a secluded coastal villa that sat perched on a cliff overlooking the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean. The house was open, airy, and filled with light, everything her old life had not been. Genevieve sat on the white terrace, a rocking chair moving rhythmically back and forth. In her arms lay the reason for everything, Alexander Sterling. He was 3 weeks old, a bundle of warmth and soft breaths. He had his mother's nose and his grandfather's stubborn chin. When he slept, his tiny fingers curled around Genevieve's thumb, anchoring her to the present. The sound of heavy boots on the wooden deck announced the arrival of General Sterling. He walked out carrying a thick manila envelope, looking more relaxed than Genevieve had ever seen him. The deep lines of stress that had etched his forehead during the trial were softening. He is asleep, the general asked softly, keeping his voice low. Finally, Genevieve whispered, looking down at her son. He has an appetite like a wolf. He has been feeding for an hour. The general pulled a chair close and sat down. He placed the envelope on the small glass table between them. It sat there, heavy with finality. The lawyers just called, the general said. The sentencing hearing concluded 20 minutes ago. Genevieve stopped rocking. She felt a phantom flutter of anxiety in her chest, a ghost of the fear she used to live with. She looked at the envelope. And? Dominique received 15 years, the general stated, his voice calm and satisfied. The judge wanted to make an example of him. The embezzlement charges alone carried a heavy penalty, but combined with the assault and the coercion, the jury had no sympathy. He will be eligible for parole in 8 years, but by then, the world will have forgotten the name Blackwood. 15 years, Genevieve repeated. She looked out, at the horizon. Alexander will be a teenager before Dominique even sees the light of day. I will never see Alexander, the general corrected firmly. The custody ruling was absolute. Dominique has no visitation rights. The court agreed that his behavior demonstrated a fundamental lack of moral character required to raise a child. You have sole legal and physical custody. He is a stranger to this boy. Genevieve let out a long breath she didn't realize she had been holding. The monster under the bed was not just gone, he was locked away. And Victoria? Genevieve asked. The general allowed himself a grim smile. Victoria avoided prison, barely. Her lawyers managed to argue that she was a passive observer rather than an active conspirator in the fraud. However, her punishment is perhaps worse for a woman like her. What happened? Bankruptcy, the general said. The civil lawsuits drained everything. The creditors took the townhouse, the cars, and the jewelry. She is currently living in a 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city, relying on a small state pension. She has no servants, no drivers, and no gala invitations. She is entirely alone. Genevieve imagined her former mother-in-law, a woman who prized status above human life, forced to live an ordinary, invisible existence. It was a fitting justice. Victoria would fade away, stripped of the only thing she ever loved, her reflection in the eyes of society. And Vanessa? Genevieve asked the final question. Vanessa testified, the general explained. It was pathetic to watch. She cried. She blamed Dominic for everything. She saved herself from jail time, but she did not save her reputation. She has moved back to Europe, but the internet is forever, Genevieve. Every employer, every potential partner, every person she meets will eventually search her name and see the video of her shoving a pregnant woman. She will carry that mark for the rest of her life. Genevieve looked down at Alexander. Stirred in his lip, letting out a soft sigh. He was safe. He would grow up knowing love, not manipulation. He would know strength, not cruelty. It is truly over, Genevieve whispered. It is, the general agreed. The estate has been sold. The proceeds were put into a trust for Alexander. The Blackwood Company has been dissolved and absorbed by a competitor. There is nothing left of them, Gen. You wiped the slate clean. Genevieve shifted the baby to her other shoulder. She stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace railing. The ocean stretched out before her, vast and powerful. He did not do it alone, she said, turning to look at her father. You saved us. He just opened the door, the general said gently. You were the one who walked through it. You were the one who stood up in that ballroom. You were the one who faced him in court. You saved yourself, Genevieve. She looked back at the water. For years, she had been told she was weak. She had been told she was fragile, boring, and dependent. She had believed it. But as she stood there, holding the weight of her son and the lightness of her freedom, she realized they had been wrong. She was not glass. She was iron. She had bent, but she had not broken. What will you do now? The general asked. You have your degree. You have the trust fund. You can do anything. Genevieve smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached her eyes and stayed there. I am going to be a mother, she said. I am going to raise him to be a good man. And then, maybe I will, start a foundation. Something to help women who are trapped in gilded cages, just like I was. I want to be the person who opens the door for them. The general stood up and joined her at the railing. He put his arm around her shoulders. The three of them stood there, 3 generations of sterlings watching the sun begin to dip toward the water, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. That sounds like a worthy mission, the general said. Genevieve took a deep breath of the salt air. It tasted like possibility. It is a new beginning, Dad, she said softly. Yes, he replied. It is a new dawn. Below them, the waves crashed against the rocks, constant and rhythmic, washing away the debris of the past. Genevieve Sterling held her son tighter, turned her face toward the warmth of the sun, and for the first time in a long time, she was not afraid of the dark. She knew that no matter what came next, she had the strength to face it. She was free.